As I told President Trump directly, I will reject any attempt to weaken Canada. I love Canada. I have many friends there. But the truth is, they've been very poorly led. Very, very poorly led. And all we want is fairness for America. August 1st, 2025. Just past midnight, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that stunned America's closest ally. Tariffs on Canadian goods, already set at 25%, were pushed to 35% overnight. We've made a few excellent deals today for our country, Trump told reporters. We're bringing in literally trillions of dollars for America. But behind the show of confidence, the economic alarms sounded instantly. Analysts warned this was more than a tariff hike. It was the opening move in a silent trade war across the world's longest undefended border. For the first time in modern history, Canada was no longer just a partner in U.S. prosperity. It had become bargaining leverage. Prime Minister Mark Carney stayed quiet in the moment, but his response would mark a turning point. Canada was already preparing to move from reliance to resilience, restructuring supply chains, diversifying markets in Europe and Asia, and investing in domestic industries long overshadowed by U.S. dominance. For decades, the U.S.-Canada partnership was so seamless it rarely made headlines. Shared borders, integrated power grids, and joint factories tied both economies together like one machine. In the auto sector alone, a single part could cross the border 7 times before reaching final assembly in Detroit or Ontario. Trump's order fractured that system overnight, shaking the foundation of North America's economic model. In Washington, it was framed as business as usual, the bigger power pressing its smaller neighbor. But in Canada, it felt like something different. The tension had been building since 2024, when Trump dismissed Canada as the 51st state. The president has once again injected himself into Canada's election campaign by raising the idea of a 51st state, Canadian media reported at the time. Trump later softened the remark. He was very, very nice. I'll say that. We had a couple of nice conversations, but it's not appropriate for me to get involved in their election. To many Canadians, it wasn't a joke. It was a signal. Washington no longer saw them as partners, but as property. At the center of the storm stood Mark Carney, elected Prime Minister in 2024. Unlike most leaders, Carney wasn't a career politician. He was a financial strategist, the man who helped stabilize global markets after the 2008 financial crisis and later guided Britain through Brexit volatility. He was known worldwide for one thing: turning crises into opportunity. My government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, Carney promised. So when Trump raised tariffs to 35%, Carney didn't flinch. He didn't call an emergency press conference. He acted with precision. Within 72 hours, Ottawa deployed what economists quietly called the nuclear option of trade retaliation, targeted measures against U.S. industries most dependent on Canadian supply chains. Energy flows, agricultural exports, and cross-border manufacturing were suddenly under review. And Carney made his position clear. My government will keep tariffs in place until Americans treat us with respect. And Americans felt the shock almost immediately. The price of a $6.98 Walmart hoodie jumped to $10.98. Morning coffee, 40% higher. Car prices climbed 4% to 8% as parts shortages rippled through assembly lines. Even leisure was hit. The classic weekend getaway to Montreal or Toronto vanished overnight, as nearly 1/3 of Canadians stopped crossing the border. This wasn't protest, it was withdrawal. Take Florida, a state that relies on 3.4 million Canadian visitors every year. Snowbirds funnel nearly $6 billion into local economies each winter. But in 2025, they didn't arrive. Condo towers sat empty, restaurants closed. Local mayors, desperate for tax revenue, pressed Washington for relief. In Ottawa, Carney said nothing. No fiery speeches, no dramatic announcements. Just calm execution, a form of economic warfare waged not with missiles, but with silence. The results were measurable. Between May 2024 and May 2025, Canada cut its dependence on U.S. exports from 78% to 68%. A 10-point shift in a single year, an adjustment economists once described as impossible without decades of planning. Canada was proving it could rebuild its economy without Washington. So where did those exports go? Gold shipments to the UK surged 473%. Trade with the European Union hit all-time highs. Partnerships with Mexico, Japan, and Australia accelerated almost overnight as Canada repositioned itself inside new supply chains. And this is where the world began to pay attention. Canada isn't just lumber and maple syrup. It holds some of the largest untapped reserves of lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements, the building blocks of modern power. They fuel iPhones, Teslas, wind turbines, fighter jets, and missile guidance systems. Here's the global reality. China controls 90% of rare earths. 94% of the permanent magnets that make advanced technology work come from Chinese factories. That monopoly has been one of Beijing's most powerful economic weapons. Canada is the only democratic nation with both the raw materials and the political stability to break that stranglehold. In a single year, it moved from being Washington's junior partner to a strategic alternative to Beijing. While Trump imposed tariffs, Carney moved in the opposite direction. Mining approvals were fast-tracked. New processing plants broke ground. Long-term supply contracts were signed with allies. For the first time in its history, Canada wasn't just shipping raw minerals abroad. It was producing refined, ready-to-use critical materials. Exactly the inputs the Pentagon needs to escape dependence on China. At home, the politeness offensive gathered momentum. Ontario Premier Doug Ford launched a Buy Canadian campaign. US-made products were publicly shamed. Within months, everyday shopping turned into quiet resistance. Every Canadian dollar spent locally became a weapon. Not anger, not threats, just discipline. Meanwhile, American households began to feel the squeeze. Shoes cost 40% more. Clothing jumped 38%. Everyday items, toothpaste, shampoo, soap, all rose sharply. By the second quarter of 2025, Ford Motor Company reported $1 billion in tariff-related costs. Procter & Gamble hiked prices after months of absorbing losses. Even Walmart admitted higher prices were now unavoidable. And then came the shock. While Trump slammed the door on Canada, he quietly opened one for Beijing. In August 2025, Washington announced a 90-day tariff truce with China. Think about that. Canada, America's closest ally, was punished. China, America's fiercest rival, was given breathing room. In those 90 days, Beijing expanded zero-tariff trade with African nations, tightening its grip on global supply chains while Washington stumbled. Carney saw the contradiction immediately. He didn't just notice it, he weaponized it. The United States was punishing its ally while empowering its competitor. And the world was watching. And that's where we stand today. A midnight decision in August 2025 didn't just raise tariffs, it reshaped the future of North America. America's closest ally has turned into its toughest challenger, while its fiercest rival quietly gains ground. The question now isn't just about trade, it's about trust, strategy, and survival in a world where every move carries global consequences. Thank you for watching. If you found this report valuable, make sure to subscribe to Traveling Vibes, turn on notifications, and join the conversation below. Do you think Trump will double down, or will Carney's strategy set the blueprint for the rest of the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'll be pinning the best one at the top.